Alright, this is the Alien Annihilators, Chapter 26, The Turret. They'd taken Kenneth's car to Selena's house, and now they were in her backyard, right in front of her garage in the back. Cleo gestured at the garage. This is where Selena keeps her spaceship. When I left her locked in that temple, I was able to use this thing to escape that temple with a simple click of a button. However, she continued, getting back to the lonely planet won't be that easy. Selena only has a travel home button, 'cause it makes getting home simple. We need to figure out how to fly it on our own. They entered the garage, and there it was, a hulking mass of metal, with rockets on its bottom to boost it into the air. Kenneth and Rachel went to take a closer look at it, but Cleo held a hand up, stopping them. She heard a sound come from the spaceship and looked in its direction. A panel had opened along its metallic side, and out came. Cleo sprang towards a metal workbench on the side opposite of the spaceship, used all her strength to tip it on its side, and crashed behind it and said, "Down, get down," hearing the warning in Cleo's voice and sensing impending danger. Kenneth and Rachel dived down behind the workbench, and then came the spray of gunfire, shooting at the workbench they'd just hidden behind. Kenneth could see the relentless spray of machine gun fire, threatening to destroy the cover they hid behind, and said, "Cleo, the gauntlet. Destroy those turrets on the spaceship, hurry." Cleo was already on it. She rested her arm on the top of the table and boom! The sound came not a second after. A bright, focused ray of light shot right out of the gauntlet, and the gunfire immediately stopped. Following the explosive sound, metal clanked on the floor in the sound's wake. Cleo counted to 10 in her head, making sure the gunfire had completely stopped. She then lifted her head slightly so she could see. Whoa, Cleo thought. The turret that had shot at them so relentlessly was now black, charred, and lying on the ground, on the floor, wires spitting electric sparks where it had been connected to the side of the spaceship. "Holy crap," Cleo whispered, hearing Cleo's surprised expression. They looked over the workbench as well, and, "Oh my gosh," Rachel said. Did you really just—" "Impossible," Kenneth said, awed. "It can't be capable of such destruction. It's just a glove. How?" Cleo looked at the gauntlet in her hand, newfound respect in her eyes. "God forbid that Lord Blazer is resurrected today, but if he is, this glove represents hope for humankind. If Lord Blazer rises to full power on that planet, he will not live to wreak havoc on the earth. I will make sure of it. I will destroy him to pieces. There will be nothing left for his minions to resurrect." Cleo knew it wouldn't be safe for them to just walk right into the spaceship. Those turrets were clearly assigned that Starlight, the AI in control of the ship, didn't want them on board. Hell, she probably didn't even want them alive. There was probably more tricks up her sleeve for when they actually entered the ship, and Cleo did not want to find out what they were. She wasn't going to allow herself to get too overconfident just because she had a glove that blew things up. Cleo had an idea on how they could sneak on board, undetected by Starlight, and took her friends to the far side of the ship. "Okay, I don't know where Starlight is, but I do know that she is the embodiment of the database on board this ship," Cleo said. "If I threaten to destroy the database that is the only reason she exists in the first place, she will have to do everything I say, even take us to the lonely planet. So we have to sneak onto the spaceship. How are we going to do that?" Rachel asked. With the power of the gauntlet at my disposal, I should be able to cut a section of this wall off. I'll just burn a hole big enough for each of us to fit through. But there's just one problem. Cleo trailed off. It'll make a lot of noise, drawing attention to what you're up to, right? Kenneth asked. Right, Cleo responded. Unless we want turrets ready for us when we enter, we need to create some kind of noise that distracts Starlight from. Cleo saw a button on the wall of the garage. It must have been the one that opened the roof of the garage. Cleo thought about how loud a sound it made, all those metal plates scraping against each other to clear the way for the spaceship. I have a plan, Cleo said. Chapter 27, The Spaceship Takeover. Cleo had her glove ready, pointing it at the side of the spaceship, keeping her arm steady. Rachel was on the other side of the spaceship, next to the button on the wall. Cleo couldn't see her from where she was, so Kenneth was keeping a watch on Rachel. Her arm was at her side, and she held free fingers up, so he did as well. Rachel put one finger down, indicating that the countdown had started. Cleo saw Kenneth put down a finger, and knew she had to brace herself mentally. She only had about 10 seconds to create a hole big enough for herself to fit in. Kenneth put another finger down, and Cleo drew in a deep breath. She was ready for this. The second Kenneth put his last finger down is the second the roof started opening, is the second Cleo began burning through the metal. She wanted to quickly cut a rectangle in the metal wall, just large enough to fit through, but the wall was quite thick, so she had to move her glove a little too slowly. It wasn't going to be done in just 10 seconds. The sun was now in Cleo's eyes and the noise was beginning to recede. Pretty soon the noise would be gone completely, and she still had the second half of the rectangle to cut through. At the last second, Cleo summoned a blast of light that tore the metal plate off. The plate hit the ground on the other side, and Cleo dived through the hole she'd just made. She was now in the main room of the spaceship, a large open space. She was in the part of this ship with the kitchen appliances, and hid herself behind the island in the middle. Poking her head over it, she saw what was probably the control area for the ship, with panels covered in dials and buttons. Beside that was... There it is, Cleo thought. If I threaten to destroy that terminal, the very source of Starlight's existence, then she'll have to cooperate. Cleo heard a metallic whirring coming from behind her, and looked up. It was... Cleo hopped across the counter and ducked just before more gunfire shot at her. It shot the marble surface of the counter instead, and debris shot in all directions. Once the turret shot its whole magazine and needed cooldown, she sprinted to the control area and spoke into the microphone on the control panel. Her voice filled the whole spaceship instantly. Starlight, turn off all offensive weapons on this spaceship, or I will destroy the computer database on this ship, and you will cease to exist, and all the accumulated data will be lost to your master. The turrets, turn them off now. At that point, maybe 8 turrets had been extracted from their hiding places in the ceiling and walls, and all were pointed directly at her. The whirring continued, which meant they'd soon shoot. Cleo pointed at the ground directly under the computer and shot a beam strong enough to send a shockwave across the whole ship. The turrets quivered and shook, along with everything else in the ship. Cleo maintained her balance and spoke into the mic again. I said drop the turrets now. Cleo yelled it this time. She looked at all the turrets on the ceiling. They were still whirring, like they were a second away from blasting lead into her, like a pincushion, and she braced herself for death. Cleo had shut her eyes in anticipation of her death, but when she heard no gunfire, she opened them slightly. The turrets, she thought, they've... Metal clanked against metal as all the turrets folded into themselves and retreated into their respective compartments. Cleo heard a door open across the room and looked in its direction. It was Starlight, and she had her hands in the air. Okay, okay, you win. Just don't touch that computer, please. It is like a mother to me. It gave me life, and I will do anything to protect it, Starlight pleaded. Once it was clear Starlight had surrendered and no longer posed a threat to them, Cleo poked her head out the hole she'd just made and encouraged her friends to come in. She walked her friends to the lounge area in the main room, where Cleo had instructed Starlight to sit at. However, Rachel stopped them before they got close. Did I hear gunfire in here? Rachel asked Cleo. Did she try to kill you? We should destroy this thing right now. It's dangerous. No, that's not an option, Cleo said. This AI knows everything there is to know about this spaceship. We need her to get to the planet of the Lonely Temple. We just need to make sure to keep an eye on her. She steps a toe out of line, and we threaten to destroy her. She'll cooperate, I know she will. Cleo proceeded towards the lounge area, Kenneth and Rachel trailing her. They got seated on the long couch, with Starlight on the armchair opposite them. Kenneth spoke first. You tried to kill us out there. We'd be dead if Cleo hadn't tipped that table over and hid us behind cover. Do you have anything to say for yourself? I was on orders, Starlight said indifferently, in a robotic, monotonous voice. Kenneth looked to Cleo. I had a feeling she'd say that. Selena must have gave the word for her to gun us down on sight. I still don't know if she used telepathy or not. It's supposed to only work between aliens, right? She spoke into a small mic hidden in her pocket. Gave the command days ago. Starlight answered. Has she said anything else to you since then? Cleo asked it this time. She said that if you managed to take over her spaceship, even under my exhaustive defensive strategies, then she would destroy me herself. Cleo spoke again. How? By destroying the computer database. No, my master has a way of destroying me remotely and instantly. In fact, I'm surprised she hasn't done it already. I'm your only way of getting to that planet. I need to trigger the functionality of the control panel for it to get you anywhere. I am only I am I am the only way of getting to that planet. I need to trigger the functionality. I need to trigger the functionality of the control panel for it to get you anywhere. I am a risk to her, and yet my master continues to keep me alive. By the way, she knows you're here, Starlight added. I told her when you got here, and when I saw Cleo threaten my life source, I hurriedly told her that you had taken over the ship, so she knows everything, and also knows the risk of keeping me alive. Cleo and her friends decided that they needed to speak privately about what they'd just learned. They went to the kitchen area and sat at the tall stools lining the island. Isn't it weird that Selena hasn't destroyed Starlight by now? Cleo asked. If she did that, we'd have no way of controlling the ship. A buzzing noise sounded a ways off. It was coming from the control area of the ship, not far away. Once they all made it there, Cleo looked at the computer screen. It said there was a call for them. Cleo clicked answer. Immediately, a man's face appeared. It was Brandon Brunt, the man that had helped them escape Jagged Rock Isle. Cleo was relieved to see him alive. Oh, thank goodness. I can finally speak with you. I need to tell you something very important, Brandon said. Last I saw you, you were lying on the ground in the helicopter hangar. You were, Cleo began. That all doesn't matter right now. Starlight knows something that Selena doesn't. And if Selena finds this out, she will set off a bomb that will tear your ship into space dust. A voice came from his end. Brandon, get out here. You're my prisoner, remember. We're gonna find a nice cell for you, I promise. Cleo recognized the voice as Melinda's. Starlight has a means of communicating with Selena. I've done my best to block correspondence between them, but I won't manage it for much longer. Footsteps were coming from Brandon's end, getting closer and louder. What's the secret? Cleo demanded. What can't Selena know? Brandon looked behind his shoulder in fear, then hurriedly rambled out. She wants you to get to the planet, wants you to witness the revival of Lord Blazer, but only because she doesn't know what about the weapon you possess, the gauntlet. You mustn't let her. A door opened on his end, and immediately the call ended. Chapter 28. The Time Bomb. Cleo sat in front of the computer, looking at the blank screen in thought. Kenneth and Rachel still stood by her side, as shocked as she was. Finally, Cleo spoke. What do we do now? She asked them. We get to the lonely planet, Kenneth said, as fast as we can. When they all got back to the lounge area, Starlight was still there, seated. Activate power to the control room now, Cleo ordered. Once Starlight took care of that, Cleo started to go to the control room, but Kenneth put a hand on her shoulder. She looked his way. I'll control the ship, Kenneth said. Didn't you hear what Brandon just said? We can't let Starlight give word that you possess the Gauntlet of Light. Someone needs to keep a close eye on her. Make sure she doesn't pull anything and ruin our whole operation. Cleo nodded agreement and sat back down on the sofa across from Starlight. Starlight just looked at an area past Cleo's head. The ship's launch into the sky had been surprisingly smooth. It really seemed Kenneth knew what he was doing. Rachel looked at the GPS on the control panel, giving Kenneth directions. So Cleo was all alone with Starlight. You tricked me, Starlight said. Cleo squinted her eyes, trying to think what she was talking about. When my master kept you captive, you wanted to know about the alien Annihilators and the weapon they possessed. You said you wanted to know what to defend my master against. But it was a lie, wasn't it? She asked, and gestured at the glove in Cleo's hand. You took the gauntlet, not to protect my master from it, but to destroy her and the Lord she means to resurrect. I should never have trusted you. I have failed my master, and I am most ashamed. Seeing Starlight's miserable expression, Cleo almost felt bad for taking advantage of her, but she said, I know that Selena is probably the one who made you, and that you are loyal to her, but I cannot let her master cause the same destruction he did all those centuries ago. I had to trick you for the greater good. You must understand this. They went silent for a while. Then Cleo asked, Do you know what would happen if Selena finds out about the gauntlet I have? She will destroy the ship, of course, Starlight said. The gauntlet you have poses a threat to her entire species, so she has every right to do so, to protect herself and everyone she ever loved. I know it's dangerous to her, and I know you don't want her to die, but I need to get to that planet in one piece, so you can't tell Selena about the gauntlet, or I'll be forced to kill you, Cleo warned. So Cleo knows of the bomb on board this ship, knows that if Master Selena wishes it, this whole ship and everyone in it will be destroyed, Starlight stated. You don't sound scared by that. Don't you know that if this ship goes down, you go down with it? Cleo asked. In the event that I am able to communicate to Selena the weapon you possess, I would be happy to be destroyed, if it meant stopping you from reaching Lonely Planet with that gauntlet. In fact, I have tried to warn Selena, but Starlight trailed off, and Cleo knew she must have had difficulty reaching Selena. She remembered what Brandon had said about him doing his best to block the signal between them, and suddenly understood why Starlight was having this trouble. If you're cool with Selena destroying us, why don't we just kill you right now? That way we don't risk you telling Selena about the weapon we possess, Cleo said. I think perhaps you should destroy me. But first, quick as light itself, Starlight lifted her arm to her mouth and yelled, Cleo has the gauntlet of light. And just as quickly, Cleo sent a focused laser right through Starlight. She lay still in her armchair, dead. But the damage had been done. Selena knew. Loud emergency sirens began to blare across the spaceship, with emergency lights flashing red across the whole cabin. Self-destruct sequence has been activated. All crew members must evacuate immediately. All who fail to do this, within the time provided them, will be destroyed, an automated voice called out. Then, in the middle of the room, large holographic numbers appeared in red. 10. 10 minutes. Oh crap, Cleo thought. I have to warn the others.